Hello everyone and welcome back to Versus, the show that today pairs well with fava beans and a nice Chianti. We got some Hannibals on the show. Not physically in studio, that would make me and my delicious brains very nervous. But we will be consuming the careers of both Mads Mikkelsen and Anthony Hopkins, digesting their finest roles and meatiest moments. They've done other stuff than just playing that famous cannibal guy. In fact, their resumes prove that these thespians can pull off a villainous twist or a heroic turn with equal aplomb. It's Mads Mikkelsen taking on Sir Anthony Hopkins. Mikkelsen v. Hopkins. Mads Anthony. Not to be confused with Mad Anthony, a delicious hot sauce from Van Halen bass player Michael Anthony. It's the best of both worlds today, and on Versus, we tend to celebrate wonderful careers by making them compete against each other. In one corner, it's Mads Mikkelsen, who's cried tears of blood in a Bond film, built a flaw into the Death Star in Star Wars, and played Hannibal Lecter to much acclaim on the small screen. In the other corner, it's Anthony Hopkins, who's been a tortured ventriloquist, the father of Asgard's finest hunks, and played Hannibal Lecter to much acclaim on the big screen. It could all come down to who can eat more. Nah, we're not gonna 4th of July Joey Chestnut Kobayashi this, are we? Oh boy, here's how we'll determine a winner. Round 1, box office. Round 2, tomato meter / audience score. Round 3, iconic characters. Round 4, memorable moments. And then we'll do a wild card round that I hope doesn't involve who is the better cannibal, but that is going to be the placeholder for now if I don't come up with something better. But knowing me like I do, it's dicey. But there you are, dear viewer, and before we begin, here's a friendly reminder that I, Mark Ellis, would never eat you, but I will lap up your comments, thoughts, and takes on this stellar versus matchup. Hit that like button. Is there still a like? Yeah, there's a like button. Hit it and buckle up for Mads Mikkelsen Esquire taking on Sir Anthony Hopkins. So apparently Anthony was knighted by the Queen, you know, the one from the Netflix show, in 1993, but then he might have renounced it as part of the process when he became an American citizen in the year 2000. So do we still call him Sir?
I am only human. Well, perhaps I made a mistake.
Yes, I think we should. I call my personal trainer Sir, and dude's 10 years younger than me.
Now that's really interesting.
I don't want to upset Tony Hops. Remember the time he played that guy who thought he was a gorilla in Instinct? You don't want to make him Mads Mikkelsen versus Anthony Hopkins right here, right now. Let's get it on.
That's it? Anyone want to play poker now?
Someone's in a hurry.
Round 1, box office. Yes, these are two highly regarded actors who have astonished their peers with dazzling performances and wowed critics for their commitment to craft. But in order to carve out a career in this biz, you gotta put butts in seats, preferably when the chairs are aimed towards a supergiant screen, you know, like in a movie theater. Now we're getting the hang of it. These guys can play just about anything, including a gorilla, Anthony. But in terms of box office might, it never hurts to have a few blockbuster franchises under your belt. And both of these boys have been featured prominently in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, also known as MC Universe, which sounds like an early 90s rapper. Anthony struck comic book gold first, appearing as King Odin, Thor's pappy, in 2011. Thor would go on to hammer $449 million on Earth. Then in 2016, Mads stepped up to battle Doc Strange in his inaugural outing, raking in $646 million. But they kept making those Thors. The Dark World grabbed $644 million, then Ragnarok hulked out to the tune of $850 million. That's good enough to top Anthony Hopkins' entire filmography in terms of cheddar accrued.
It's strange.
Maybe. Who am I to judge?
Mads' highest earner of all time was another little property called Star Wars, and his benevolent scientist helped Rogue One drum up over $1 billion worldwide. But these fellas, they weren't done franchising just yet. Mads was a seminal Bond baddie in Casino Royale, which took home a cool $594 million. And did you remember he was in Clash of the Titans? Yeah, that movie cracking $493 million, followed by Fantastic Beasts, The Secrets of Dumbledore's $404 million in magic. That's probably the last time I'm going to call that movie by its proper title. I have fun with the Fantastic Beast flicks, because if I don't, who will?
Sinful.
Anthony Hopkins isn't a one-franchise pony either. He was in a Transformers movie, the one about medieval times, and his portrayal of Sir Edmund Burton in The Last Knight grossed over $600 million. Enjoy it in this round, Autobots, because that tomato meter round, it's a-coming.
I do so love perfect timing.
He also popped in to narrate How the Grinch Stole Christmas in the year 2000, and that film hooed its way to a $345 million take. Another story based on a book, Noah made $352 million, and The Mask of Zorro sliced up $233 million back in 1998. Ooh, he was in Dracula too, as in a good guy, Van Helsing, and the 1992 film, also based on a book now that I think about it, sunk its fangs into $215 million in cash register jingles. Seems like he had one more franchise to brag about. Oh, right, the whole doctor thing. But you do not want Dr. Lecter making a house call. You want to Zoom with them? Knock yourself out. His first foray into the sick world of Hannibal was in The Silence of the Lambs, which chewed up $275 million. Then a decade later, Hannibal would gobble up $350 million, and for dessert, Red Dragon consumed $206 million. I'm glad that was his last one because I am out of descriptive verbiage and I'm already past my carb allotment for the day.
I think I'll eat your heart.
All told, Anthony Hopkins got a few decades head start in his movie career. Would it pay off in this round? Kinda. He loses out to Mads if we look at the average box office receipts accounting for all of his movies. Hopkins stands at about $115 million per film. Mads is at $205 million. But Mikkelsen's career total is $3.6 billion against Hopkins's $6.3 billion. So, which way do we lean? And by we, I mean me, I guess. Sometimes I go with the gross total, other times I prefer average. Here, I feel like both actors have done plenty of tiny films that weigh down their box office averages. And since the total is helped in large part by franchises, the one property that you can say needed that person the most was Hannibal. Some of us saw Manhunter with Brian Cox as the good bad doctor, but the role is still synonymous most with Hopkins and his trilogy, even more so than the recent run Mikkelsen had on television. It was good and highly rated, but not enough to steal a point in the first stage. Anthony Hopkins, maybe a sir, definitely gets the round 1 point, and he goes up 1-0.
Thank you, Barney.
Round 2, tomato meter / audience score. All right, let's penalize some Transformers movies, shall we? That wasn't a nice way to welcome you all to round 2. It is the round where we look at both the critical takes and the masses' opinions on the fine job applications of Anthony Hopkins and Mads Mikkelsen.
You must be very proud. Proud as I can be.
In short, this round will answer the question, are those beasts really fantastic?
Oh, it's beyond special.
We'll get to them, but first we honor a deliciously evil turn. That's a bad choice of words because I'm actually talking about Mads Mikkelsen as Bond ne'er-do-well Le Chiffre. The guy plays a mean hand of poker, and the critics were smitten. Casino Royale stirred up a 94% on the tomato meter and a 90% on the audience score. A rare double 90 Club member, as is Open Hearts from 2002, and 2012's The Hunt, which saw Mads score a Best Actor dub at the prestigious Cannes Film Festival.
You must have thought I was bluffing, Mr. Bond.
Anthony Hopkins, he's also got a few 90-90 entries, including The Father at 98% on the tomato meter and 92% with the audience. He won an Oscar for that flick. And then he has Silence of the Lambs, which has twin 95% on two scales, the tomato meter and the audience score. And you know what, if memory serves, he also won an Oscar for that movie. Who do you think you are, pal? Meryl Streep? He has been nominated 4 other times, so he's got a way to go to catch our queen of cinema. But she wasn't in The Elephant Man from 1980. Was she? No, she wasn't. Anthony was, and it's at 92% on the TM and 93% with the audience. Ooh, last but oldest is The Lion in Winter, one of Hopkins' earliest film roles, and the 1968 talkie is at 90% on both measuring sticks. Okay, so we got some momentum going here. Further chewing along fresh ground for Tone is Amistad at 78%, Nixon at 75%, and Bram Stoker's Bloodsucker at 77%. Red Dragon is fresh at 69%, but curiously Hannibal, the middle of his 3 Lecter films, the meat in that sandwich, is rotten at 39%. Huh, what happened? Red Dragon came out like the next year, and it's fresh with the victims, I mean audience, resting at 62%. And for Sir Lord Mikkelsen, he's got fresh fare like Doctor Strange at 89%, Rogue One at 84%, and At Eternity's Gate has a 79%. And for what it's worth, Hannibal the Show is another member of the 90-90 Club. A better host would have mentioned that along with his movies, but I write stream of consciousness, baby.
That was rude, Miss Lowe.
The series run can boast a 92% with the critics and a 94% with the audience. But it can't be all sunshine and roses and tasty meats. There's some rotten on these fellas' filmography's underbellies, and so let's lift it up, and I'm just about done with that metaphor. Real talk, I got super excited looking at Mads Mikkelsen's tomato meter list and seeing Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny on it. It doesn't have a score. The movie comes out in the summer, probably not even finished yet, but pretty good trailer, right? Let's hope it's not rotten. Like, say, Clash of the Titans at 27%, or 2011's Three Musketeers at 26%, or even King Arthur's 31%. That's the one from 2004, not the Guy Ritchie joint. Fantastic Beasts, The Secrets of the Stud from the Holiday is also rotten at 46%, but the audience dug it to the tune of 83%. And for the record, The Holiday, featuring Jude Law, is also somehow rotten at 51% on the tomato meter. You monsters! It's a great holiday movie.
Oops.
Anthony Hopkins is now hoping his mightography doesn't weigh him down, but he does have that Transformers movie to deal with. The Last Night is 16%. Bad Company with Chris Rock was good as far as I remember, but it landed at just 10% in the veggie patch and at 35% with the crowds. Oh no, and Alexander's also at 16%. Yikes. Okay, time to save it with Instinct, the movie where Hopkins is convinced he's a primate. 27%, but fresh with the audience at 67%. Well done, crowds. Anthony Hopkins was also in Free Jack, where Emilio Estevez, let me get this right, Estevez plays a NASCAR driver who vrooms into a dystopian future and duels with Mick Jagger. That's got fresh written all over it. Or maybe it doesn't. 26%. You can't win them all, Anthony, but how about this round? Look, Anthony Hopkins is one of the all-time great actors that has ever inhabited planet Earth, or Asgard, may it rest in peace. But his average tomato meter score is rotten, or I'll be nice and say fresh adjacent at 55%, which is actually not that bad. Some hits, some misses. How about the audience score? 58%. Okay, so he's in the ballgame. Can it top the Bloody Tears guy? You know, if I wept plasma, I might break bed too. LaShifra, if you need a hug, come on in. It's not your fault. And speaking of the show Breaking Bad, I have a cool story about that later. Stay tuned. Meanwhile, Jen Urso's daddy came here not just to play, but to win. He's got a fresh 69% average on the tomato meter. That pleases Bill and Ted.
69, dudes!
And his audience average is 70%. Sure, he hasn't had the output of Anthony Hopkins yet. Who has? Besides you, Meryl, we get it. You're good. I feel like Mads has been around long enough to make this round a fair fight, and he scores a punch. Round 2 goes to Mickey, and we're tied 1-1.
It belongs to you.
Round 3, iconic characters. Let me ask you an honest question, dear audience. This show's been airing since, 1981? So we've known each other a while. So here it goes. Who is the first character you think of when I say the name Anthony Hopkins? Still probably Hannibal Lecter, right? Maybe Odin, possibly Elder Zorro. In the Ellis household, it's obviously the guy who thinks he's a gorilla. But it's cray-cray that after all these years, nay centuries, packed with wonderful Hopkins performances, Hannibal is still the first dude that comes to mind. Is that the case with Mads? I actually don't think so. I might lean towards his Casino Royale bad guy or his Star Wars good guy, so this round could get pretty competitive even with the massive head start Anthony got due to that whole being born earlier thing. Will Mikkelsen earn points for disappearing into more roles? Or will it be Hopkins for playing the most memorable Lecter, topping Mads? This one's gonna be a hoot. I might have known about The Silence of the Lambs starring this legendary actor back in 1992, but for little Mark, that year was all about Dracula. Van Helsing might have been the first time I saw Hopkins and went, I think this guy's got a future. It's a wonderful movie, Bram Stoker's Dracula, that is. Certain star accents aren't the best, but wow does Van Helsing inject some energy into that bloodstream. It's a horror movie and a gothic romance, and we're starting to feel the weight of hundreds of years of loneliness. Then comes Mr. 5-Hour Energy Anthony, and we get some fun one-liners, awesome action, and a battle plan to off the undead hairdo once and for all.
Vampires do exist.
If you held a cross to my head, I couldn't tell you if that character was based on any sort of real person, but apparently there really was a president named Richard M. Nixon. What did the M stand for? Ask Bart Simpson's neighbor. Not Flanders, the other one. Hopkins landed a Best Actor nod for portraying the embattled president who was juggling everything from the heights of the space race to the lows of Vietnam to the sneakiness of Watergate. And we all know what Nixon looked like, his mannerisms, he was in the TV era, and Anthony still nailed it. I mean, I could probably pull off Millard Fillmore. I don't know what that guy's quirks were, but to stick the landing with Nixon, that's impressive. But Mads Mikkelsen has plenty of range too. You see, back when Star Wars used to be movies and not TV shows, they'd announce the cast way ahead of time, then us fans would guess who was going to play who. Rogue One gets heated up, the guy who took no mercy on James Bond's manhood books apart, and we all thought that's the next great galaxy far, far away villain. But instead, he played Galen Erso, the imprisoned father of our protagonist Jyn Erso, and he's warm, compassionate, he's a family guy. He did what he had to do to protect them, and in doing so, was commissioned to build the Death Star. He was a genius along the lines of an intergalactic Oppenheimer, and his screen time elicits a tender side that most audiences may not have seen yet. Speaking of, y'all see that trailer for Nolan's Oppenheimer movie? Holy crap, is that going to be something special. The versatility with both these gents continues. Mikkelsen is an accomplished dancer, started out pursuing ballet for goodness sakes, so a role in a movie like Another Round is the shoe that fits. 2012's The Hunt is yet another side of his brilliance. There's a reason he took Cannes by storm that year, and his sheer will to survive in the film Arctic is literally breathtaking. Conversely, Anthony Hopkins thought about going full-time with the piano in his youth, but decided to instead become Loki's stepdad. There's a few acting roles in between, like in Magic. I'm obsessed with this movie. Hopkins earns overtime playing both a ventriloquist and voicing the dummy, lovingly called Fats, but not in the way you want to voice a puppet.
How do you like it? I think it's going to be terrific.
What's with gangrene? Blue Cross repossess your tongue?
Come on, shut up.
The Thing takes over, and it's a precursor to our horror movie buddies like Chucky, Chucky's Bride, Annabelle, and Welcome Megan to the Party. Plus, I'll say it here, Buzz and Woody. They're cute, but get those demons away from my bedroom. He knocks a classical piece like Titus out of the park, elevates so-so material like in The Wolfman, and his turn in The Father is astounding. As a patriarch, stubborn to ask for assistance as he gets older, it's heartbreaking and oddly life-affirming in a weird way. The movie's good, Hopkins is legendary. But we do love seeing these two go down a darker path. Did you know Anthony Hopkins once played Hitler? It's a film called The Bunker, and I'm not sure there's many historical figures that Hops can't pull off. Mads is a threat to steal every scene in Casino Royale, but I feel like Hannibal Lecter would also enjoy torturing James Bond. Ooh, let's get that movie in the hopper. Both gentlemen excel in the role of the diabolical cannibal. Hopkins presents us with a quiet, unnerving presence, a few explosions of anger where we see why he's locked up in a place like that, and he holds Clarice in the palm of his hand. Jodie Foster's in good company there because the rest of the audience watching is entranced as well. Like Hopkins, Mikkelsen can inject a sly, intellectual wit to the proceedings, and in both cases, we see the brilliance and the horror of this dude.
You intend me to be my own Last Supper?
Yes.
He's such a charmer. He'd be a fun friend to, pal around with during the day, but just be gone before night falls. All told, Anthony Hopkins' filmography is just too stacked for Mikkelsen to keep up thus far, but Mads is on pace to beat his predecessor's level before it's all said and done. Anthony Hopkins wins round 3 today and goes up 2-1.
A census taker once tried to test me. I ate his liver with some fava beans.
Round 4, memorable moments. And here's another phase where Anthony Hopkins' resume can really factor in. The dude's been searing memories into our yummy brain tissues for decades, yet he's still about as prolific as any young buck working today. And in a round that will be won by the actor that's given us the most thrills, chills, and noteworthy sequences, he's got to be the favorite. But Mads Mikkelsen has a puncher's chance here. Why? The art of dance. Look at Mads Mikkelsen go. Did you know that was part of his skill set? I mentioned that he trained in ballet, among other movement disciplines, and watching the movie Another Round makes me feel like not only will this guy win a few Oscars, he should be hosting the damn ceremony. Of course, we came to know him from his stoic poker playing and fits of anger against international super spies. The quiet, boiling cauldron that is Le Chiffre at the poker table gives way to an all-time Bond villain turn that includes ingenious torture methods and tugging at James's heartstrings. Casino Royale is a top 5 007 movie for me, and the primary villain is a huge reason why.
I have Japan. You have a 17.4% chance of making you straight.
If it's action you like, Mads has plenty more to offer. The shootout in Riders of Justice is gnarly, and there's lots of violence in Polar, not to be confused with Arctic, where he's just trying to survive when his plane crashes into the frozen tundra that is definitely not Lambeau Field. Ooh, y'all seen Valhalla Rising? Not that Valhalla. Here, Mads plays a guy who, in lieu of seeing an optometrist, opts to just bludgeon people. Slightly more to the story, I'm told. I won't ruin it for you here, but it's brutal, and do not get on the wrong side of Mr. One-Eye. Doctor Strange further showcases Mads' ability to wreck many shops, and Rogue One shows his tender side. The scene where Jyn and Galen get to reunite may be brief, but it packs an emotional wallop, and remember, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, none of them get to be heroes or denied Chewbacca his medal if Galen Erso hadn't built that flaw into the Death Star. I mean, he probably could have made the exhaust port a little bigger, but then maybe Red Leader nails the proton torpedo shot and is the hero. But nope, it just impacted on the surface.
Stop! It was me! It was me!
Here's a movie I hadn't heard of. After the Wedding. It's a Danish film with a soulful Mads dealing with his ex. One scene in particular, the can we talk moment, is astonishing. If you've ever had a can we talk moment, you know. Incredible actor, that dude. As is Anthony Hopkins. In another world, he could have tickled the ivories while Mads did some soft shoe on stage, but they both got bit hard by the radioactive acting bug.
You can't fight the inevitable. Isn't it beautiful?
And Hopkins has proven over his illustrious career that he can do it all. Stirring soliloquies like in Amistad, inspirational speeches like his I'm going to kill the bass scene in The Edge, and his mentoring of the next generation of Zorro. Even back when he was beginning his film career, he could hold his own with anyone, including Katharine Hepburn and Peter O'Toole in The Lion in Winter. I guess it shouldn't be that surprising simply because prior to that, Hopkins worked as the understudy a few times to Sir Laurence Olivier, who as far as I know remained a knight the rest of his days. I still don't know if Anthony's a knight or not, but if England does need a battle-tested warrior, give Van Helsing a buzz.
I command you in the name of Christ!
I love this performance so much. He just barges in, alleviates all doubt that vampires do in fact exist, and he goes the distance with Dracula. I also might send Hannibal into combat as long as he promises not to eat anyone on our side. As Dr. Lecter, the iconic lines like his beckoning to come closer, or to the side dishes he prefers while munching on liver, not the kind from an animal, remain as haunting now as they were in 1992. He also has a wonderful tete-a-tete with Edward Norton in Red Dragon, and enjoys, more cuisine courtesy of Ray Liotta in the film Hannibal.
That smells great.
I'll forever champion his performance in Magic. Y'all watch that movie. It's bonkers, but if I'm being honest, I think of The Father now more than anything else when Hopkins is brought up. Probably recency bias, and it's nothing against the classic 1999 film Instinct, but it's such an emotional ride he takes us on. The regrets, the longing, and actual Lion in Winter eking out as much independence as he can muster before the chapter of this life closes. It's one of the more recent examples of why Hopkins is such a legend. And while Mads Mikkelsen could be on his way to such status, Hopkins is still the king of the hill. Hopkins wins the round and goes up 3-1.
Jolly good.
And now it's time for the wild card round. Story time with Uncle Mark. The more mathematically proficient of our viewers will see the score is 3-1 and realize that this is the final round, so Mads Mikkelsen kind of needs a miracle to pull out a victory. I've never given out 2 points in any one round of verses, not even to King Kong or Ewoks or Old Yeller. So Mads is going to take an L here, but before we close up shop, remember how I mentioned Breaking Bad? Here's the story. So as Bryan Cranston, Anna Gunn and company closed out the final season of what would be an all-time television triumph, it seemed like everyone in the world was furiously racing to catch up on past seasons. You know, binge-watching, including Anthony freaking Hopkins. After doing so, he penned a letter to Bryan Cranston, which I will now perform excerpts from. I'm nervous, now it's my turn to do a monologue, and Tony might actually be watching. Here we go. Dear Mr. Cranston, I just finished a marathon of watching Breaking Bad, from episode 1 of the first season to the last 8 episodes. I've never watched anything like it. Brilliant! Your performance as Walter White was the best acting I have seen ever. From what started as a black comedy descended into a labyrinth of blood, destruction, and hell, it was like a great Jacobean, Shakespearean, or Greek tragedy. If you ever get a chance to, would you pass on my admiration to everyone? Thank you. That kind of work artistry is rare, and when once in a while it occurs, as in this epic work, it restores confidence. You and all the cast are the best actors I've ever seen. That may sound like a good lungful of smoke blowing, but it is not. It's almost midnight out here in Malibu, and I felt compelled to write this email. Congratulations and my deepest respect. You are a great, great actor. Best regards, Tony Hopkins. He called himself Tony. Bryan Cranston gets to call him Tony. I probably can't. Anyway, I just thought it was a really cool story about talent, paying it forward, and an all-timer making the next generation feel special. That's good stuff. Anthony Hopkins gets the win on Versus, an honor I'm sure will be taken with the same level of pride as an Academy Award. God right. But that next generation, Mads Mikkelsen is in there. He's got range for days, and we all can't wait to see what's next in store for him. That does it for this episode of Versus. I get to clock out, but you, the viewer, step right up. Hit me up on social media at Mark Ellis Live, and all of us here at Rotten Tomatoes at Rotten Tomatoes. Thanks for watching Versus. I'm Mark Ellis, and I will not put the lotion in the basket.